from the age of probably about 11, I knew I wanted to be an archaeologist, if I could be. I didn't know there were such things maybe, but looking at the past, it's always fascinated me. And luckily enough, I did it at university. And then my real breakthrough at the age of, gosh, a long time ago now, 22, I ended up working for a man called Professor Barry Cunliffe, who was just, you know, one of the biggest names in British archaeology, and it was a huge privilege, and you got to dig some phenomenal sites. And I knew then that, you know, that was my career. I had to stay in archaeology or whatever it took, really. So I worked for him for a long time, and then in 2004, a friend of mine said, "There's a job working with the Ministry of Defence doing archaeology. It's a bit of a strange thing, but what do you think?" And I thought, well, it's based on Salisbury Plain, which I think's just about the best landscape for archaeology in Europe, I think. So I applied, and I've got it, and I've not looked back. And archaeology with the Ministry of Defence has been phenomenal. And out of that, we've drawn this Operation Nightingale project because you work with so many wounded soldiers.
Could you just tell us what Operation Nightingale is, how it works?
We started, it's over 10 years, I can't believe how time's flown. 10 years ago, I had a phone call from a medical sergeant connected to the Rifles, which is one of the British regiments that had taken the most casualties in the campaigns in Afghanistan and Iraq. And he said that he had a soldier that really was in quite a bad place. His military career was coming to an end. He'd been hit by a mortar round, so he's going to have to get out of the army. And therefore that put him in quite a dark place, I think, really. And the thing that kept him going, and this will tickle you, the thing that kept him going was watching episodes of Time Team. He loved the idea of being in the open air, of discovering things, using physical strength and mental health aspects as well, and just doing archaeology. So they said, could we do some archaeology with him? And it's been going since that point onwards.
That's fantastic. So really the idea is to use archaeology as a form of rehabilitation. Do you have one that stands out as a big success story?
Yes, I take great delight in naming and shaming this individual. It's a day at Barrow Clump. It's a Bronze Age burial mound with a 6th century cemetery put into it. It's one of our big projects. And I noticed one day that there were two veterans working next to each other. One was a signaller called Matt, and next to him was an NCO, non-commissioned officer, from the Royal Marines called Dickie. These two quite gnarly characters, and they're having a little argument about who's got the prettier jewellery in the grave that they're working on. Who's got the prettier beads? And this sort of thing, you're not expecting hard military characters to be arguing about who's got better jewellery. But anyway, that was what was going on. And both of them had never any ideas about going into archaeology. Matt only came along to shut his friend up, who'd been going on about how good archaeology was. He only came along just to shut him up, said, "I've given it a go, now be quiet." And he's still with us 10 years on. Dickie, having been medically discharged from the Royal Marines, he got such a taste for it that he decided he was going to go and do a degree. So he went to Exeter University, got a first class degree, which is shaming because I don't have a first class degree, so he's now more qualified than me. He then got a master's degree in archaeology, and now he's our leading assessor of mental health well-being. He's a leading exponent in Britain. He's probably the go-to person to look at mental health, veterans and archaeology. And he's working out the own assessment methodologies. He's formed a charity called Breaking Ground Heritage that brings in the veterans that works on my programs and assesses their own well-being throughout. So this man is an inspirational character from both a military point of view and an archaeological point of view as well. And he'll hate that, so really do put that out.
So as a journey through Operation Nightingale, I mean, it really can't get much better than that, can it?
I don't think so. I think archaeology is great for mental health. It's great for well-being in the round because you're able to use your hands and your mind and all sorts of things. It's a very positive thing. My father, who was a military veteran, although he wasn't a martial character at all, he was just in for the duration of the Second World War. He was in British tanks. I never talked about the war. Very British stiff upper lip officer sort of thing. Just I don't want to talk about that sort of thing. He'd tell me the funny stories, but never the really military war-y ones. And in the last week of his life, he'd wake up each night thinking he was back in Normandy. He'd been in an armoured unit that had fought through the Germans into France and the Low Countries, and he thought he was back fighting that fight, and he would be on the radio to the tank next to him that had been hit, caught fire, and eventually blew up, immolating everyone in it. And he was going through those horrors every morning in that last week, and I think that was his body just releasing those horrible stories he'd parcelled up with what we would call PTSD. And that was, for me, as a real eye-opener, because I knew he had elements of depression in his life. But that was it. And you know, it was stupid that I'd never realised that he had PTSD, but he'd parcelled it up. And so to work with younger men and women who have gone through more modern experiences of that sort of thing was a very, very powerful thing. And for me, that gave me an extra energy and thought, you know, we've really got to do something here, because there are a lot of people that are suffering's a bland word, but you know what I mean.
Yep.
It's that sort of that feeling they're going through traumatic experiences. And if archaeology, the thing I love, and the thing that you love as well, if that can pass on an experience that makes them feel a little bit better, or do no harm at bare minimum, then that's got to be a good thing.
Absolutely. The work is not just rehabilitation, it's actually really important archaeology. And we've been lucky enough to come across you at a time where you were excavating some Bronze Age work, at a point in time where we wanted to build a Bronze Age structure, because at Butser we have a lot of chronologies. We have the Stone Age over there, we're in the Iron Age, we have Roman, Anglo-Saxon, but we've got that big 1,500 year gap there, so the timing was really good. Would you mind just telling me a little bit about the actual excavation that you did that uncovered this roundhouse that we want to build?
I'm thrilled that we're able to do this, because I used to do much more about the Bronze Age. It's my background, so for me it's an age of alchemy, it's magical, and the fact that there's this perfect timing for both us and you, it just works really well. I work for the Ministry of Defence, and all the jobs we do with Operation Nightingale, they're jobs that need doing. We're not inventing tasks for wounded individuals. These are jobs that I need doing that they could usefully be a part of, and they'll have learning experiences, and that's just wonder of archaeology. And when you know, I know, archaeology is a fabulous thing. There's a job for everyone. And one of the things I wanted to do over the last few years is just to get a little bit of data about the effects of things like ploughing and military training on our archaeology, on the biggest of the training areas, which is Salisbury Plain, not too far from where we are today. So we've looked at the way tanks and tractors have gone over what's left of an Anglo-Saxon cemetery, and then we came to Dunch Hill. We've got Bronze Age barrows, we've got Bronze Age field systems, Bronze Age linear ditches, all things of Bronze Age landscape, but where do they live? Where do they live? It's a massive area, same size to the Isle of Wight. They lived somewhere. Dunch Hill is that one place. So we managed to get permissions and a small budget together to excavate this one area, Dunch Hill, expose where a roundhouse we hoped would be, and that's where we are today.
Was it a shock? Were you surprised when you came across a Bronze Age house there?
I think relieved, probably more. And it's the track that goes to this place called the Driver Training Area on Salisbury Plain, and when they put that in, Wessex Archaeology did an evaluation project and found 4 roundhouses directly under the road, and I thought, well, it would be too big a coincidence surely if all the houses are encapsulated by that road scheme. It's now got a causeway over it. So we took a bit of a gamble, moving just to the north of the road scheme, and stripped that area off. And of course, when we did that, there were loads of post holes everywhere. So it wasn't a problem necessarily finding the house, it's trying to work out the configuration, because there were holes everywhere. You came and visited, you saw that it was like a Swiss cheese, wasn't it? There's holes everywhere, and just trying to work out which ones connected to the house, which are fences, which are 4-post structures. That was the dilemma of trying to work out whether it was indeed circular. We know the post holes are there, but what did this thing look like? And that's where you come in, I think.
Yeah, we've got a real blank canvas, and I think that's the nature of what we do here. I mean, we're sitting within what we would call an Iron Age house. It's based on Iron Age archaeology, so it's from about 400 BC. But frankly, no one alive has ever seen this house. We don't know that this is what it looked like. We have about 99.9% of the original missing. So we're basing this on a tiny fraction of what's left in the archaeology. Our Bronze Age house has some different features to this. We still only have about 0.1% of the information, but we have different information. So we're going to have a different house. It will be round, but it's about 1,000 years older than this one. It has a few features this one doesn't, and vice versa. So we have, again, this almost blank canvas to play with, or a canvas with just a few little spots on it. And I think the biggest pity is we can only build one house, because from any piece of archaeology like that, you could probably construct 10 different versions of the house, each probably equally valid. But it is an exciting project because we will do it as a group, isn't it? I mean, that's one of the real keys about this project. I
love the fact that the veterans are doing their own research, many of whom have never had that sort of formal education and done this sort of research, and they're being infused by the whole process. I had one example, is that the veteran asked me the other day, I can't remember whether it was on an open question, you might have heard this one, and I was talking about a later site than our Bronze Age site, the East Chisholmbury Midden, which is basically a big curated set of materials that are connected with feasting and things like that, on Salisbury Plain, not too far from Dunch Hill. And one of the things we found within that was a piece of human skull. And it's been radiocarbon dated to the later Bronze Age, so it's older than a lot of the housing that's up there, but it was found in association with Iron Age housing, a piece of Bronze Age female human skull. And one of the veterans said to me, in the roof of this Bronze Age house that we are going to put at Butser, can we put a human skull in the roof? And I'm thinking, well, I don't see why not. I think it'd be a wonderful thing to do, but I noticed you've got real animal skulls around these houses, and I think we might have to draw the line at having a real human skull, maybe a replica, but you know, a kind of plastic version of it. But it was really nice that they were thinking of this sort of thing about not just the structure and how it sits, but what sort of things went into a Bronze Age house beyond the merely practical.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because it is easy to think about houses in prehistory as being just purely functional objects that keep the rain off. But we know from so much evidence from the Bronze Age of beautiful aesthetic goods, pottery, jewellery, even some of the weaponry, to be honest, is still beautiful. We know that these people had aesthetic sensibilities. How do you think that this project's going to benefit academia?
I think what'll be good is to, once we have built this, just to see what works and what doesn't work. It's one of these practical questions about what kind of having livestock around a house, you know, having sheep running around the house. What's that going to do to it? Is that going to leave any physical manifestations that we might be able to see in the archaeological record? They go, that's what's happened there. How long does it take before you have to repair these? Does that have implications for resources? And then we can look at Bronze Age landscapes and say, well, maybe that's why they're looking at these particular areas to recover wood to build these things, because they've got to repair it every 3 years, 2 years, 1 year, don't know. I think that'll be a really important thing to find out. Why is there a central post hole? That's one of the key questions, I think, in this Bronze Age build, is that only a small number have these things. Is it structural or not? I mean, are we going to find out? I don't know. Is it going to be that for me? I think that's, if I was given one thing, the central post hole, what on earth is that there for?
There's not really any evidence for walls.
Yeah.
But we're assuming that it had walls because there's a structure of posts, which again we're assuming held up a roof. So logically it had walls. So what were they made of?
Yeah.
They're made of something that dissolves completely. So now we've got this opportunity to use material that dissolves completely. Dirt is a good start. How long does it take to dissolve? What's left? Interestingly enough, that's not often been done in British archaeology. A lot of these prehistoric buildings are assumed to have more of a sort of structured wall built of posts with some sort of a plaster material made of wood and dung. But a lot of the buildings in Britain were probably not built that way. But we've never tested this, or seldom tested this experimentally. So I think we've got a big opportunity here to feed back into academic archaeology, and might actually change a few opinions about the nature of these buildings.
The good thing as well is you've got a pretty similar geology here at Butser to the Dunch Hill area as well. So we may find, I don't know, let's say once this structure's up, that we end up with a certain erosion pattern that does repeat at Dunch Hill on some of our post holes, and we may be able to say, well, that structure may have been caused by having these particular timbers in a certain way, or it's been removed and repaired, and that may give us a little feedback from the structure we put here into the report from Dunch Hill, actually work out from the practical point of view what's left in the ground and why it's left in the ground in a certain way. So that's, I think, going to be quite exciting too.
It's an exciting project on a lot of levels, working with Operation Nightingale. Having this fresh archaeology, we've seen the archaeology, we've looked at it as the experimentalists. You, of course, as the field archaeologist, excavated it, and you'll be able to come and see the building of the process. So we have this sort of synergy, I suppose, that is really rare. I think it's very rare that the excavator gets to build the house. It's very rare that the experimentalist gets to look at the excavation.
It's exciting on so many levels, and I think it's great because you can walk through Britain's past in a few hundred metres, and I think that's a really valuable thing.
I don't think there's an archaeologist alive who is not fascinated by that transition of aesthetics, that transition of building styles, and what we're going to be able to do by situating that Bronze Age structure in between the Late Stone Age and the Iron Age, so in that chronological order. In fact, that's how our site's laid out. I hope that everyone who visits is going to ask the question, why is this a big, long, rectangular structure, and then, you know, a few hundred years later, or maybe 1,000 years later, why are they roundhouses?
Yep.
Why do they go back then to rectangular houses? Those are fundamental questions to archaeology. We don't know the answer. Was it people? Was it ideas? Was it the fact that they were running out of materials? Who knows? But the great thing now is we're going to have what we call a full chronology. So that allows people who visit us to be an archaeologist themselves, to actually investigate and ask those questions. So,
and you get so many school visits here. If you can spark one kid in all these visits to think, ask all these questions and want to find more and to become maybe an archaeologist in the future, how good would that be?
I think we're both looking forward very much to starting this.
I can't wait. I mean, to be in a smoke-filled room, which is Bronze Age in its look, is just going to be a real excitement. I just cannot wait.